Hi, and welcome to Storytime with Granny Mouse. Today we're going to read The Adventures of Toby and Doby Mouse. This book is written by Susan Pennington and illustrated by the talents of Mike Motts. We are going to begin reading Chapter 1, called Strangers in the Basement, and I really hope you enjoy it. Click! The dark basement came alive as the 4-year-old pushed the light switch up. Sitting, she worked her way slowly down the steps, one at a time. The basement was a scary place for little girls. Eerie shadows leapt from every corner. In the quiet, she could hear the thump-thump of her tiny little heart. Suddenly, she heard a noise that sent her scurrying back to the top of the stairs. She pushed open the door and slammed it shut behind her. Shaking, she promised herself she would never go down there again. As with all little girls, curiosity soon got the best of her, and a few days later she found herself once more at the bottom of the steps. Vowing to be brave, she stood up and began poking around in search of anything that a 5-year-old girl might find exciting. Little did she know that she was about to embark on the adventure of a lifetime. Squeak! Freezing like a statue, the little girl listened to the same noise that had frightened her a few days before. Squeak, squeak! Standing tall, she grit her teeth and clenched her tiny little fist, determined to be brave. Urgh. Inch by inch, she moved closer to where the noise was coming from. Getting down on her knees, she slowly peeks over a pile of wood. What she sees makes her smile. 2 baby mice, so busy fighting over an old rotten piece of cheese, they don't even notice her. One would grab it in his little mouth and run, then the other one would pounce on top of him and take it away. It was such a funny sight, the little girl couldn't help but laugh. The little girl's laugh frightened the little mice, and they ran back to the safety of their hole, dropping the cheese along the way. Inside they crouched, trembling with fear. Knowing that she scared them saddened the little girl. Peering into the hole, she spoke softly to them. Little mice, I'm sorry. I did not mean to scare you. Please come out. After a few minutes, the little mice still had not appeared. The little girl began to cry. Hearing her soft sobs, the baby mice looked at one another with wonder. They had never heard a human cry before. Moving closer to the opening of the hole, they peered out at the small child. There she sat on her knees, her tiny feet poking out from beneath her dress, her face buried deep into her small hands. Courage took over as the baby mice gradually moved out from within the safety of their hole. Sitting quietly, they stared up at the little human before them. After a few minutes, they glanced at one another and nodded. Slowly they crept out and went up to the little girl. Standing in front of her, they squeaked a small squeak. Squeak! Not getting her attention, they squeaked a little louder. Squeak! And still a little louder. Squeak! The little girl slowly peeked out from between her fingers. Her tear-stained face lit up at the sight of the 2 baby mice in front of her. She wiped her eyes and smiled at them. In their own way, they seemed to smile back. Hello, the little girl said. Squeak, the baby mice responded. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to frighten you. Squeak, squeak, the baby mice replied, as if to say, it's okay. You look so funny fighting over that old yucky piece of cheese. I just had to laugh. The 2 mice seemed to be thinking about it. And then, as if they understood, they rolled back on their butts, their rumps, and their tiny little feet on their tummies, and they laughed. Ha! Squeak, 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 squeak. Their antics made the little girl laugh, too, and soon all 3 were rolling on the floor. What's going on down there? A voice called out from up above. Nothing, the little girls called back, as the baby mice, frightened once more, ran for the safety of their hole. Seeing them run for cover, the little girl crawled over to the hole and putting her eye up to the hole. She peered inside and whispered, "It's okay. You can come out. That was just my mommy." Two wiggling noses poked back out through the hole. "Mommy," one of them said. "Humans have mommies too?" "I guess so," the other one said. The little girl fell back in surprise. "You can talk." "Of course we can talk. We talk to each other all the..." "Hey, she can understand us," the bigger mouse said, interrupting the little one with a poke in the ribs. "How'd that happen?" the little mouse asked. "I don't know," the bigger mouse answered. "You don't squeak anymore," the little girl remarked. "You talk like me now." "It must be magic," the little mouse cried out, excited. "Magic? Yeah, that's it. Magic," the bigger mouse exclaimed, scratching his head, confused. "You can talk. You can talk," the little girl said, clapping her hands together with glee. "It must be magic. It must be." The three friends talked and played until the little girl's mommy called her up for lunch. "What's lunch?" the little mouse asked. "What's lunch?" the little girl repeated with surprise. "Don't you know what lunch is?" The little mice shook their heads. "Well," the little girl began, "lunch is when you sit at the table with your mommy and have a sandwich and a glass of milk and a cookie before you take your nap. That's lunch," she announced, nodding her head with pride at knowing what lunch is. "Oh," the mice exclaimed, scratching their heads. They still did not understand lunch. "I'll save you some and bring it down after nap time," the little girl promised as she dashed up the stairs. "Lunch, what an interesting idea," the big mouse said. "I think I understand." "Me too," the little mouse said, trying to be smart. "But what's nap time and sandwich and milk?" "What's cookie?" they chimed together. "I guess we'll find out when the little girl comes back," the bigger mouse answered. "How long do you think nap time is?" asked the smaller mouse. Both mice shrugged their shoulders. Lying down on the floor, just outside their hole, they waited for the little girl who would bring them lunch. Well, that concludes today's story, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I want you to make sure you come back next Tuesday at 7 o'clock to hear Chapter 2 and find out what happens. Have a good night. Thank you for joining me.